Resuming debate, the honourable member for Ottawa South.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. As Chair of the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians, I want to provide this evening an overview of the committee's composition, its mandate and functions, given there have been numerous recent references to NSICOP in the House. I speak this evening exclusively as the chair of our non-partisan committee. To begin, I wish to offer my sincere thanks on behalf of our committee to our outgoing members, the member for Medicine Hat, Cardston, Warner, the member for Pickering, Uxbridge, and the member for Provencher, all valuable members of our committee who offered their considered wisdom, enlivened our debates, and provided an important contribution to our work. J'aimerais également souhaiter la bienvenue aux nouveaux membres de...
I would also like to welcome new members of the committee. We are looking forward to working with the member for Aurora, Uxbridge's Richmond Hill, the member for Kootenay, Columbia, the member for London Centre North, the member for Mississauga, Erin Mills, and the member for Montarville. The committee was created in June 2017 with the passage of an Act to establish the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians. In November of the same year, the first members of the committee were appointed. After the 2019 federal election, the committee was re-established in February 2020, and yesterday, its composition was updated yet again.
The committee was set up to fill a gap in Canada's National Security Review Framework. First, to give parliamentarians the necessary clearances to conduct reviews of the security and intelligence community drawn from highly classified information. And second, to create a body that could look across the community at a range of issues without being constrained by the mandate of individual organizations or the narrow focus of their review bodies. The act that established NSICOP is specific and very clear. It lays out with precision the committee's membership, the appointment process, members' security obligations, the rights and limits to access information for the committee's work, procedural rules, and reporting obligations. The Act also provides that the appropriate committees of the House and the other place must comprehensively review its provisions and its operation 5 years after its coming into force, which will be in 2022. Our committee is unprecedented in Canadian parliamentary history. It is unique in terms of our security clearances, in terms of the physical requirements of our secure workspaces, and in terms of our structure. The nature of the committee, multi-party, bicameral, and a membership with a broad range of experience brings a unique perspective to these important issues. We act as a proxy group for Parliament and for Canadians in examining issues related to national security and intelligence. Le comité est composé d'un président.
The committee's composition is one chair and a maximum of 10 other members, who are all members of one of the two houses of Parliament. Up to 3 members may come from the other place, and up to 8 may come from the House, but not more than 5 of those can be members of the government. This means that parliamentarians on the government side never form a majority. With yesterday's announcement, we now have a complete committee with 8 members from the House and 3 senators.
Madam Speaker, members all hold a top-secret security clearance, have sworn an oath, and are permanently bound to secrecy under the Security of Information Act. In the course of its work, the committee may review highly classified information with only a few narrow exceptions. The committee is not entitled to have access to cabinet confidences, to information protected by the Witness Protection Program Act, to information relating to the identity of confidential sources, and information relating directly to an ongoing law enforcement investigation. Madam Speaker, we cannot claim parliamentary privilege in the case of an authorized disclosure of classified information. That is a point I want to emphasize. Members of the committee, myself included, are necessarily circumspect in what we can say in Parliament and in public. It also means that NSICOP members are subject to prosecution under the Security of Information Act should they disclose information that they learned in the course of their duties on the committee. Le comité a pour mandat de...
The committee's mandate is to examine the legislative, regulatory, strategic, financial, and administrative frameworks of national security and intelligence. It can also study any activity conducted by a department which deals with national security or intelligence.
And finally, the committee may review any matter relating to national security or intelligence that a minister refers to the committee. NSICOP reports are unanimous and non-partisan. The committee prepares and finalizes its reports through consensus, following painstaking deliberations, and all members agree on final content, assessments, and recommendations. NSICOP's reports are informed by the documents that departments and agencies undertaking national security and intelligence activities must provide, as well as by the committee's meetings with relevant officials, outside experts, and members of civil society.
And the workload is heavy. Generally, Madam Speaker, the committee meets 8 hours a week, in addition to any time required to examine classified documents in a designated secure workspace. The members often meet during non-sitting weeks of the House, as well as during the summer.
NSICOP provides an annual report to the Prime Minister that includes its substantive reviews as well as the committee's recommendations. The Prime Minister may then direct that the committee prepare a revised version of its report. The information to be revised is set out clearly in the Act. It is information the disclosure of which would be injurious to national security, to national defense, or to international relations, or is information that is protected by litigation privilege or by solicitor-client privilege, or the professional secrecy of advocates and notaries. Madam Speaker, there are no other reasons under which a Prime Minister may direct the committee to remove information from its reports. Information cannot be redacted because it may be embarrassing to or critical of any government. The redaction process is similar to the one used by the government when determining what information can be released in court proceedings, typically under Section 38 of the Canada Evidence Act. The Prime Minister tables the revised report in Parliament, and the report is referred to parliamentary committees in both houses, as required by our statute. The committee may also submit a special report to the Prime Minister on any matter related to its mandate. Unless the committee has notified the Prime Minister of its intention to prepare a summary of the special report, it also is revised, if necessary, and tabled and referred in the same manner as the annual reports. This is very, very similar to the process followed by the United Kingdom.
I'm sorry. I have a point of order from the Honourable Member for Central Okanagan, Similkameen Nicola.
Very briefly, I appreciate this member's service on that committee, but we're here to debate a specific motion. He's yet to address this. He's given us background of his committee, which I'm sure he's proud. Perhaps, Madam Speaker, you could get him to come to the motion.
I'm sorry, I should have stayed up so that your mic could stay up. When I stood up, your mic ended. But I do appreciate the honourable member's point of order. I do want to remind members when they are debating presenting in the House, they have to certainly be addressing the subject matter at hand, mentioning the subject matter at hand or portions of. And so I do want to remind the honourable member, and I know that there is some latitude in the speeches, but I do want to remind the honourable member and all members that when they're making their speeches to please ensure that they keep in mind the subject matter that they are actually debating. So the honourable member for Ottawa South.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. I was saying this is very similar to the process followed by the United Kingdom's Intelligence and Security Committee, which must submit its annual and special reports to the Prime Minister for consultation and review prior to tabling, identifying at that time any redactions that have been made on national security grounds. Depuis 2017,
Since 2017, we have conducted 7 studies, which have informed 3 annual reports and 2 special reports. All members and senators have recently received paper copies of our 2020 annual report, and this report and other reports will also be available on our website.
the House to note, Madam Speaker, is that in each instance, NSICOP members reviewed and assessed information up to the government's highest classification. The committee did so with the utmost discretion, arriving at its findings and recommendations independently. Those were then provided to the Prime Minister and responsible ministers. In our 2018 inaugural annual report, we provided a functional overview of the security and intelligence community, including the most significant national security threats, as described by key members of the security and intelligence community. These were terrorism, espionage and foreign interference, cyber threats, major organized crime, and weapons of mass destruction. Also in 2018, the committee reviewed the government's process for setting intelligence priorities, as well as the intelligence activities of the Department of National Defence and the Canadian Armed Forces. Nous avons reconnu que les activités durant
We recognize that defense intelligence activities are essential to the security of our armed forces and to the success of Canadian military activities, including abroad. Among other things, the committee recommended that the government could seriously consider granting clear legislative authorization for the conduct of defense intelligence activities.
The committee also presented its first special report in 2018 regarding the allegations associated with the Prime Minister's official visit to India. One recommendation repeated in the subsequent review of the government response to foreign interference was that members of Parliament and senators be briefed upon being sworn in and regularly thereafter on the risks of foreign interference and extremism in Canada.
In 2019, the committee examined diversity and inclusion in the security and intelligence community, and this study provided a basic evaluation of the situation of the intelligence and security community in terms of diversity and inclusion in certain designated groups. Overall, it showed that their representation was lower than that of the public service as a whole, and that the rates of harassment and discrimination remained unacceptable. We recommended that the situation be re-examined in 3 to 5 years in order to evaluate progress made. We also recommended the improvement of data collection and analysis and the development of a common framework for performance measures.
Also reviewed the government's response to the serious challenge of foreign interference. We found that the government's response to the threat was done on a case-by-case, even ad hoc basis, and that our engagement with other levels of government and the Canadian public was limited. In its review, the committee called for a whole-of-government strategy to counter foreign interference and build institutional and public resilience. We were specific in our recommendation about what such a strategy should include, and we further recommended that the government support the strategy through sustained central leadership and coordination. Finalement, le comité a examiné.
Finally, the committee examined the national security and intelligence activities of CBSA. Overall, it was found that the agency's powers to conduct activities linked to national security and intelligence are clear, well-governed, and supported by a number of laws. However, the agency has not received instructions from the minister to conduct sensitive activities related to national security or intelligence. This situation did not comply with CSIS and RCMP practices, and according to the committee, was a flaw as concerns ministerial responsibility. The committee thus recommended that the Minister of Public Safety provide the CBSA with written directives with regard to the conduct of sensitive activities as they pertain to national security and intelligence.
That same year, the committee also prepared a special report on the collection, use, retention, and dissemination of information on Canadians in the context of the Department of National Defence and the Canadian Armed Forces Defence Intelligence.
I have another point of order. The honourable member for North Okanagan, Similkameen Nicola.
Madam Speaker, 5 minutes ago I raised a point of order with you. You asked this member to come and to be relevant. He's basically reviewing the annual reports his committee does, which is not the subject of tonight's debate. He is not a rookie. He certainly has a committee role that's important. But, Madam Speaker, I would ask you to rule whether or not he's being relevant to the issue or simply disregarding your ruling and this House.
The honourable member for Kingston and the Island also wishes to add to the point of order.
On that point of order, Madam Speaker, the entire premise of what the government's position was hinges on this member's intervention of the committee that he represents. The entire argument that's coming from the government has to do specifically with this committee. So the member explaining why this committee is the important committee for this is extremely relevant to the argument that the government made. I would encourage you to allow him to continue his speech.
Once again, I appreciate the points of order. I do want to remind the members that the question of privilege hinges upon the motion, and therefore there is some latitude. However, the honourable member for North Okanagan, Similkameen Nicola, is correct in that the honourable member must ensure that his speech revolves around the question of privilege, and that discussion needs to be there. So I would suggest to the honourable member to ensure that his speech is relevant to the question and that he references that point of that question of privilege and the motion if he wishes to do so. The honourable member for Ottawa South.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I won't be long, and I think the relevance will become quite self-evident. Following our examination of the documents provided to the committee and our meetings with DND CAF officials, the committee formed an opinion that DND intelligence activities conducted as part of overseas operations may not be in compliance with the Privacy Act. The committee referred this matter to the Attorney General, pursuant to its obligation under Section 31.1 of the NSICOP Act, which requires it to make such a referral when, in its opinion, an activity may not be in compliance with the law. The review built on the committee's 2018 recommendation that the government give serious consideration to providing explicit legislative authority for the conduct of defense intelligence activities, and went further in recommending that the Minister of National Defense introduce legislation governing defense intelligence activities.
In 2020, of course, the members of the committee, like all Canadians, were confronted with the unprecedented situation of the pandemic. Therefore, the committee decided to provide the Prime Minister the only consolidated overview of threats to Canada's national security.
And the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction did not fundamentally change.
I have another point of order. The honourable member for York Simcoe.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I was just wondering if the honourable member could table this report that he's reading or go on to the report about the Lake Simcoe Cleanup Fund, which we're waiting for in York Simcoe, and we'd love to hear that. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
So again, the honourable member, that's more of a question. It's not really a point of order. I would say that it's more a debate. I do, again, want to remind the honourable member that he should ensure that his speech is relevant, and if he wishes, I can certainly read the question of privilege, which says that this House find the Public Health Agency of Canada to be in contempt of its failure to obey the order of the House adopted on June 2nd, 2021, as well as the orders of the Special Committee on Canada-China Relations adopted on March 31st and May 10th, 2021, and accordingly orders its president to attend at the bar of the House. Does he want me to continue? Or does he have the...
Yes, please. I'm learning more about this debate.
Does the honourable member for Ottawa South want me to continue, or does he have the question of privilege before him and he will make sure that his speech is relevant to it?
I have the question, Madam Speaker.
Perfect.
Thank you for that. I have the motion, and as I was saying earlier,
I would suggest that he references that every once in a while during his speech, and so therefore the honourable member for Ottawa South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for your indulgence. I wanted to continue just to say that the committee, of course, has been reviewing the major threats for the country: terrorism, espionage, and foreign interference, and cyber actors, for example. We have reported very, very openly now for Canadians on the question of terrorism, the growth of ideologically motivated violent extremists, the rise of groups embracing xenophobic violence, anti-authority violence, gender-driven violence. We've seen a growing number of examples of neo-Nazi, white supremacist, misogynist groups, individuals planning or conducting attacks, a trend which is mirrored around the world. And finally, I think while the restrictions imposed as part of the COVID lockdown, such as limitations on travel, have disrupted terrorism facilitation efforts, the pandemic and the concurrent protests increased anti-government rhetoric connected to ideologically motivated violent extremism. So, Madam Speaker, in conclusion, the point of this evening's speech is to illustrate that there is a highly functioning committee comprised of good members from all sides of the House of Commons, and of course, members from the other place as well. It has been working well together now for over 3.5 years, has produced 7 fundamental reviews, 3 annual reports. I've tried to set out for members, for all colleagues, for Canadians, how we conduct reviews under the legislation, when we are asked to redact, how we are asked to redact, the limitations on being asked to redact. And so I think finally, the message I want to leave with all parliamentarians, Madam Speaker, through you is this. Committee members form a dedicated, non-partisan group of parliamentarians from both houses that take pride in undertaking serious work on serious national security and intelligence issues. Thank you, Madam Speaker, very much for the opportunity to speak this evening.
Questions and comments. The honourable member for Bruce Grey, Owen Sound.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd just like to correct the member in his speech. He talked about that the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians is a proxy of Parliament. I'd remind him that unlike similar bodies in other Five Eyes countries, such as the Intelligence and Security Committee of Parliament in the UK or the Parliament Joint Committee on Intelligence and Security in Australia, the NSICOP is not a standing committee, nor a special committee, nor a standing committee of the Parliament of Canada, and that they in fact are part of the executive of government, and therefore they do not report to the House. They report to the Prime Minister. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Ottawa South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The honourable member is partly correct and partly incorrect. NSICOP is located halfway between Parliament and the Executive. The committee is housed within the executive body of government and does report to the Prime Minister, but it is composed of parliamentarians. It is not bound by the procedural rules of parliamentary committees, and it operates at arm's length. However, the Five Eye organizations he refers to, for comparative purposes, have their own variations on structure. As I mentioned in my speech, the ISC in the United Kingdom has a very similar, if not identical, reporting relationship with its Prime Minister, who also is involved in redactions of reports before those reports are made public by being tabled in their house, just as our reports here are made public by tabling through the Prime Minister. Committee members from all political stripes contribute their unique perspective as legislators to national security and intelligence matters. They have a range of experience, but together they represent perspectives from across this country.
The Honourable East.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The suggestion that this committee is appropriate, it was basically rejected by the Speaker in his ruling today. He says, in reference to the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians, he says, as the members for Louis Saint Laurent and St. John's East have pointed out, the Act also makes clear that despite its composition, this body is not a committee of Parliament. It exists outside of Parliament. In these circumstances, the Chair cannot conclude that the document submitted to the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians fulfills an order of this House or of its committees. I think that's very clear, and I would invite you to refute that ruling.
I'm just going to stop the clock. I'm not going to refute it. I will ask the honourable member to do that. But before I ask the honourable member to do that, I would ask him maybe to unplug and replug his mic. There seems to be an issue for the interpreters. So if he could do that and maybe give me a quick test once he has done that.
Sure. I've just tried it again, Madam Speaker.
Is that working now? Est-ce que ça fonctionne mieux? Can continue. If there's an issue, I will raise it again. The honourable member for Ottawa South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Merci beaucoup. As I've noted in my remarks, the NSICOP Act allows the committee to review any matter relating to national security or intelligence that a minister of the Crown refers to it. The committee carefully deliberates before beginning one of its reviews, and it undertakes them on a very consensus basis. Deliberations can include discussions with relevant officials or with other review agencies or open source research. The committee, of course, posts the launch of each of its reviews on its website. So I can confirm this evening that the committee has received a letter referral from the Minister of Health. I can also confirm that the committee has received documents forwarded by the Public Health Agency of Canada in unredacted form.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Economic Development and Official Languages.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And given that it's almost summer break, I hope you indulge me before I ask my question, just to maybe my last chance to speak before the break, to thank my staff for their hard work over the years, especially during the pandemic, which has added additional stress to everyone. Thank you to my Whitehorse team, Susan Moorhead-Mooney, Ellen McDonald, and Alicia Kylick, as well as my Ottawa team, Aaron Castleman and Brad Weston. Being the MP for Yukon has been an honor of my lifetime, and I want to thank Yukoners for continuing to put their faith in me year after year after year. And my question is related to the point of privilege and which committee this should go to. I was very excited when NSICOP was created because I thought long before that we really needed it, because I assume that many of the most serious safety issues for Canada, security issues for Canadians, were not being dealt with by parliamentarians because they didn't have the right security clearance. And I think the members' reports suggest that that has been much improved since the committee was created. From the reports he outlined tonight, I just want to confirm that that is true, that these serious issues.
The honourable member for Ottawa South.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker, to my colleague from the Yukon. Maybe if I could just take a moment to go back to a theme that's important, I think, to tonight's debate. And this is the question of whether the Prime Minister may direct the committee to revise its reports. He may, but that discretion, the discretion to do so, is not unlimited. He may only direct NSICOP to remove information that would be injurious to national security, national defense, or international relations, or that is a solicitor-client privilege matter. And the use of would, the word would in the legislation is a high bar, Madam Speaker. The process to determine which information qualifies is modeled on the process used by the federal court to redact information from public decisions. And finally, on that point, since the creation of the committee and throughout our 7 comprehensive reviews, the government has never directed the committee to remove information from a report that was not legitimately injurious.
Questions et comments?
Questions and comments?
Comments? The honourable member for North Okanagan, Similkameen, Nicola.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just quickly a comment and then 2 brief questions. First of all, I want to congratulate the member for completely ignoring the question before the House today. He read his way right through it. Second to it, Madam Speaker, he did give a very good overview, a nonpartisan overview of his committee, so I'd ask to see if he would be willing to come to my Rotary Club to give that presentation. We don't talk politics at our Rotary Club. And the last thing I would just simply say, will him in his capacity as a member of Parliament for Ottawa South, will he be voting yay or nay for the actual motion?
The honourable member for Ottawa South.
Madam Speaker, I thank my colleague for the question. It gives me an opportunity to come back to an important theme that I think runs its way through the ongoing debate right now, which NSICOP members have been scrupulously careful to not directly participate in because of our special responsibilities. I mentioned the significant constraints that we all carry with respect to sharing information, the fact that our parliamentary privilege is waived in the context of the work that we undertake. I know the member understands that and respects that. But I do want to add to comments I made earlier for his benefit and for the House's benefit around government direction to the committee, which is a theme which has been raised in different places. The government has never pressured the committee to select or avoid a topic for review, Madam Speaker. It has never pressured the committee to change a finding or a recommendation. So I think all members of our NSICOP committee would agree we jealously guard the integrity and the independence of the committee because we are seized with such profoundly important responsibilities in the area of national security and intelligence.
For a brief question,
the honourable member for Lac Saint-Jean. I want to ask my honourable colleague to answer the question. I'll give him a second chance. Will he vote yes or no on the motion?
The honourable for Ottawa South.
Madam Speaker, I just wanted to, maybe if I could, wrap up this evening, my presence this evening in the House to share the work of NSICOP, the membership, the Act, the powers that it possesses, the restrictions, its role, its mandate. I really want to thank all of the members who have served on the committee since the committee was created 3.5 years ago. I really want to welcome the new members from the Bloc Québécois, from the Conservative Party, from the Liberal Party, who are joining other members, including a member from the NDP and 3 senators. I'm anxious for us to come together to continue to serve the Canadian people by taking on this enormous responsibility and sharing our findings with all parliamentarians from all sides of the House. We think we have an important role to play. We believe we're acquitting ourselves reasonably well, but we are always open to suggestions for improvement. And I would ask the House to consider that there is a mandatory 5-year review of the legislation which creates NSICOP. It will be up for review in 2022, and I know all members of the committee would very much appreciate good guidance and recommendations for improvement in the way in which we operate. Thank you, Madam Speaker.